trees witness our human history and are there to see how we change and grow over time.
Norman oak tree was a Quercus virginiana, is the genus and species, and it is also known as live oak. This tree was certainly one that was beloved by folks in this building, but it was well known all over campus. And that's how these big trees become to us. They become sort of these touchstone points, these places that we can come back to, and we expect to see it there all the time.
So we did some informal research around what people loved about the College of Education, and through, everyone we talked to told us about the tree and how much they loved it and how much they spent time under it, or they walked by it every day, or was this sort of touchstone across generations.
When I was here as an undergrad in the 1990s, it was a whole generation that was learning to become educators. And if you fast forward 25 plus years, to come back here as a professor and to see that tree here really represented, for me personally, the generations of Gators.
It was the place where, with colleagues and students, when we were looking for a place to meet, it was going to be the Norman Courtyard. And it's not just because it was a nice courtyard, it's because the tree was in the courtyard. It was a place that gave us shade, it was a place that gave us beauty and a sense of community. You know, when we would come together at the start of each semester for our program area back-to-school socials, we would do them in the courtyard, and we'd almost always end them with a group picture in front of the tree.
It felt like a homecoming every time we had events around the tree.
My colleagues and I would go and eat lunch there when the weather was nice, and the tree provided this amazing shade and just the atmosphere of the courtyard.
Why that tree fell and what went on. If you look at how that tree grew, it was actually multiple stems that grew together. And so that at some point in time when they were independent stems, they all had bark around them, right? Where the bark was together, we call that occluded bark. Unfortunately, that's a weak spot. You can see some evidence where they tried to bolt that tree together, which was certainly a valid thing to do. But ultimately, it's just so heavy, so big, that it just couldn't hold itself together.
To see that tree here, it actually made a really big impact on me when I was doing my final interview. And what stood in my mind was the courtyard and the chance to come back to something like that.
I came from the middle of campus where it was like this huge hustle and bustle. So to come over to Norman and to be invited to lunch like under this large, beautiful tree was such a different pace for me. So I think that kind of set the tone for my excitement for working over in Norman.
It was very early in my freshman year, and I kind of got lost after getting coffee. I went out the wrong way, and I ended up in the courtyard, and I sat down, and I decided I was going to study there. And I didn't get a lot of studying done because I realized there was a huge tree, and there were squirrels and birds, and it was just, I don't know, I was kind of mesmerized.
The whole food chain's going on right in there on the branches of the trees. And of course, then those things are feeding birds and other things. So that's going to have a big impact.
Connections to nature are starting to make almost like a renaissance where people are recognizing the importance of connecting to nature. I think it's becoming even more important as we spend so much time inside and on computers and commuting from place to place in vehicles, recognizing the role that nature plays in our overall well-being.
You just don't even realize those networks of connection that we all feel that we don't acknowledge. I think the tree meant that to a lot of people.
It was iconic for Norman Hall, and so, for that matter, it sort of represented the College of Education for me, but, it wasn't until it came down. Sort of realized how it represented a certain strength that was just sort of steady and always there.
The immediate reaction when it came down was sadness, but very shortly after that, just minutes after that, you start to think about the resilience, or you start to think about nature and the fact that Everything goes through its seasons. It's full of acorns, it's full of sprouts, and those are going to come back. But the courtyard is going to go through another season, and we'll see what that looks like.
As time marches on, there are some things we don't want to last forever. When we are working towards more equitable spaces in schools, we want to keep pushing forward. We want to keep working for change. That's why we all come to Norman.
This next generation can make a new mark, whether it's planting new trees or rethinking about how the space can be used. I think it's an opportunity for the next generation to decide, what will Norman Courtyard feel like, look like, and mean to us.
I think one of the silver linings, having had my own experience of losing like all the trees in my backyard when I had the hurricane, was that I know things grow back, and that when something like this happens, it's also very unifying, I think, for community members. So, we all care so much about this symbol, and we want to make sure that whatever we do next is going to be the right decision.
I always tell my students, in death, there's life. And so one of the things that we've been asked to do, and I was asked to do, was to collect some of the acorns from this tree. And luckily there's a bunch on there right now. And so we're going to collect those acorns and we're going to plant them out, and hopefully we'll get some of them to germinate, and we'll have some small seedlings from this tree that we can either replant in this spot or share out with some of those people that are feeling that loss. One hopeful thing that can come from this is that this tree can get replaced with its own progeny down the road.
Trees, they invest in their future, even if they know they're not going to be part of that future. And so do we at the College of Education. I think we're all investing in a future we may not be here to experience, but that's beautiful. So I will just miss the reminder of that cycle, but I know something will come in its place to be equally inspirational.
In a lot of ways, I think we can think of the tree much as we think about teachers, right? Teachers have a broad reach, just as the tree's branches have reached out and touched the buildings at Norman and touched many of the students and educators and faculty that have come through the College of Education. We often take for granted that our teachers will always be there. And of course, the reality is that they retire and they move on. And just as the tree has done so, I think nevertheless, we still see the reaches and the touches of the tree in the work of our students. They're going out there and having an impact in the world, of our faculty that continue on with research. And I think in that way, right, the tree is kind of symbolic of the work we do preparing educators and being educators ourselves. Nothing lasts forever, but the seeds that we drop, those continue to have an impact.